decided along the way, maybe this whole sort of pinstripe grey suit thing wasn't going to be quite the thing for me.
This week on Now That's It, Braddon McCleland of South Africa-based Networks Associates tells how he leveraged an accounting background to launch a career based on his passion for IT.
There's no particular playbook or model or step-by-step guide that you can follow that just says, do this, do that.
And how the move to managed services has benefited his business.
That as a services model allowed us to demonstrate the value we were adding to our customers' businesses more easily.
Welcome to Now That's It, Stories of MSP Success, where we dive into the journeys of some of the trailblazers in our industry to find out how they used their passion for technology to help turn managed services into the thriving sector it is today.
Mr. Braddon McCleland.
Yeah.
McCleland, yes.
That's right.
Very, very nice to meet you today. So wanted to just talk to you a little bit about your business, your company, and why don't you just start a little bit about what your background is and how you got started in managed services?
Well, Chris, interesting story. So I come from an accounting background, in fact, studied chartered accounting and decided along the way, just before I finished that up, that, well, maybe this whole sort of pinstripe grey suit thing and, wasn't going to be quite the thing for me. And considering I had a love in IT, well, those two sort of backgrounds merged. And before I knew it, I was in the IT industry, running my own IT business.
Braddon, what inspired you to start your own business?
Chris, well, I suppose I've been pretty self-motivated. And the idea of probably working for myself and the freedom that brought, supposedly I thought that at the time, was an attraction.
Mhm.
And, because of the skills that I had at that particular point in time, it just sort of naturally followed.
When you start your business, obviously you have visions of everything working out, really, really well. And I'm sure you've had tons of success in the beginning, but what were some of those challenges that you faced sort of early on? And what did you do to overcome some of those challenges?
So, Chris, I think in the early days, a lot of the time you're feeling your way by experience.
Mhm.
There's no particular playbook or model or step-by-step, guide that you can follow that just says, do this, do that. So you're learning a lot out of criticism from customers. You're learning a lot from feedback from staff, and you're doing just a lot of sort of exploratory, discovery along the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no magic manual of here's how you run a managed service business, is
No,
there?
not at all. I think 'cause the person that does that would make good money.
That's right. That's great. So this is sort of the name of this podcast is, now that's IT, that's it, right? And so I want to think about what was the point when you realized that this was it, that you had done the right thing, that you were in business for the right reasons and you should have been doing this all along.
So we've probably been around for about 20, 25 years at the moment. So I suppose over 2 decades. And I reckon it was around about the 2010s, probably 10, 15 years ago, when the whole the industry changed to a more as a services type model. I reckon that was the pivotal point in the industry, and certainly in our business, when I realized, hang on, you know what, this is something really good. It's something that allowed us, that as a services model allowed us to demonstrate the value we were adding to our customers' businesses more easily than what we were able to do previously.
How do you build that relationship, that partnership with that client? What's that feel like?
So we've always had the belief that taking the worries of IT support away from the customer is a very important, motto or even belief within our business. And making IT the least of the customers of their business's operational concerns is important to us. Because if those things are, you know, the center, if their IT issues are center of their business, well, you know what, it's not ideal. So being able to onboard a customer, make them understand that our process is to drive efficiency and remove the concern of IT, certainly from an operational point of view, out of their business, is probably in most cases the first thing that we do. And thereafter, you start walking the journey with them.
That's really smart. I mean, most businesses don't go into business to become to run their own IT, right? They've got another reason. And so for you to be able to take that worry, that burden off of them so that they can focus on why they went into business, I think that's
Right. I think a lot of business owners don't realize how time sapping and how much resources go into supporting the IT system until it fails,
That's right.
and they have an entire office complement that is not functioning.
That's great. Well, speaking of the customer, what's your approach to customer service, and how do you ensure that your customers are really satisfied with the work that you do?
So there's no one particular success factor that gives us that recipe. I'll be the first to admit that we make plenty of mistakes along the way.
Sure.
Again, I think a lot of it is how you fix those mistakes. But certainly employing the right staff with the right attitude does a lot more than any kind of formal qualification in a staff member. Having years of experience, I suppose, when you bring the team together, does help. Measuring those, success, or certainly measuring certain turnaround times, KPIs, and so on with the customer and internally does help drive success. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a collective team effort.
That's great. Very, very good. And then how's the business evolved over the years? I mean, you said 25 years, 25 years. What are some of the key milestones that you've reached along the way?
Well, it started off as an IT support business.
Mhm.
A lot of the time just doing break, fix, ad hoc support. Because
Sure.
that was the model 20 years ago that a lot of IT companies followed. And certainly, I say 5 or 10 years into it, the as a services model became more prominent. And that allowed us to really change and evolve our business to the extent that I'd say at least 80 to 90% of our business or of our clients nowadays are on a services model of sorts. Simultaneously, in terms of milestones, in between that, we brought in, and certainly due to my background in accounting, I brought in our other division, which focuses on all the Sage accounting and payroll consulting services.
Wow.
So we've got a big division or big team that focuses on that as well.
That's
And those two, really opposite but complementary divisions within the business allow us to deliver a very sort of rounded solution to a customer.
That's fantastic. That's great, Braddon. So this is a fun question. I always like to ask business owners this. So for me, if I'm going into business, or there's somebody else that's thinking about going into the managed service business, what what's that one piece of advice that you would give me, or that entrepreneur that's thinking about going into managed services?
Don't do it. You might have to edit that one.
That's
No,
yeah.
you'll have to ask the question again.
That's a good one. Okay. Braddon, what advice would you give to someone that's just starting out in the business, or just starting their managed service business out?
Chris, I think it's invaluable to invest in systems. And I speak of systems both in terms of RMM tools, Enable being, you know, obviously, an invaluable tool, but I also talk of finance systems, reporting systems, anything that allows you to be able to make an informed decision and be able to get informed reports out of the business would be an absolute invaluable tool in terms of being able to get the business running efficiently.
What goals, for the future do you have for your business? What do you and how do you plan to achieve those goals?
Because we've always grown our business organically, and I think one of the things that we haven't been good at is certainly marketing the business. It's just we've relied very heavily on organic growth, word of mouth, and that's been good to us. But certainly going forward, I would recommend or certainly think that we can invest a lot more time in marketing the business. Now that we've got that base, that foundation in place, certainly in terms of having the right management tools and the operational procedures in place, I think that growing the business and potentially even looking at acquisitions that we can take on with us would be advantageous.
I wish you the very best of luck in the future, Braddon, and I thank you very, very much for being with us today.
Thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure too.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or your preferred podcast platform, and follow Enable on LinkedIn. We appreciate your support and encourage you to leave a rating or review, as it helps us reach more listeners who can benefit from the wealth of knowledge shared on this show.